Ivan Alexandrovich Wyschnegradsky was quite the composer. He led a life of solitude, and instead of joining a musical camp or school, such as the Second Viennese School, which composers like Webern and Schoenberg were a part of, he forged his own unique path in music. Well-known isn't certainly not an adjective that would be readily applied to him, but if he were to be well-known for anything, it would be his pioneering and extreme experimentation in microtonal music.
Des ténèbres de la nuit de l'existence, l'aube apparaît. C'est le flambeau divin de la conscience, l'esprit qui s'éveille du sommeil éternel.
Wyschnegradsky was born in May of 1893 to a controlling father who wanted his son to follow in his footsteps as a lawyer. His mother wrote poetry. Ironically, his passion to learn music was actually stemmed from his father, who introduced him to music from a very early age. The effects of Scriabin and mysticism in general were especially profound. He attended a college that taught law for his father's sake, but eventually switched to music study there, learning harmony. Another important influence on his life was Eastern philosophy, and the first piece from this video, A Day of Being, originally was centered on Hinduism and was titled A Day of Brahma. Over time, he became erratic with his behavior and lifestyle, and his father suggested that he be sent to a mental institution. He was evaluated and found to be non-violent, although definitely strange. Another important moment in his life happened in 1919, where he imagined that the chromatic scale that almost all music was based from was not in fact the smallest unit of a stepwise spectrum, but instead only measured points in an infinitely small spectrum of tone, and that a massive world of music existed out there, untouched by Western composers. At this point, he set out to create instruments capable of playing notes in these unknown regions of music. He left his childhood home of St. Petersburg in Russia to France, hoping to find people with the technological capacity to create these instruments. His plan to return to the motherland was lost when his citizenship there was revoked. They believed that he was fleeing Russia, which was in the middle of a civil war, but such was not the case. Although he lived out the rest of his life in France, he was never made a legal citizen there either. The French proved to be of little help, and the only company he found that was even interested in researching this new type of instrument wasn't able to make anything. He moved on to Germany and found the help he needed, both technologically and philosophically. It was in Prague that Wyschnegradsky met Eloy Abba, another important composer in the microtonal community. It is likely that a lot of their music was affected by each other. They worked together to design and champion the quarter-tone piano, which took on its final form in 1929. He wrote several microtonal pieces in this time, including 2 songs based on Nietzsche in 1923, a string quartet in 1931, and 24 preludes for 2 quarter-tone pianos in 1934. In 1932, he wrote his Manual of Quarter-Tone Harmony, which is an exceptionally rare book to find now, where he discusses in great detail about his understanding of 24-tone harmony, and even provided examples of musical cadences that would use specific microtonal forms. Through exhaustive work, I actually have a copy of this manual in French, saved as a PDF for private research, but sadly I don't understand French, so a lot of the knowledge from within its covers escapes me. In the mid-30s, he came to the conclusion that his microtonal piano wasn't as useful as he previously thought, requiring a great deal of dexterity from the performer and materials from the manufacturer. So he reverted to his original method he used to implement, writing duets for pianos tuned differently. This old method sparked a new approach in him, however, and he began enthusiastically writing music for even denser harmonic settings, dividing the whole tone more and more. One of my favorites from this era is his Prelude and Fugue, which called for 3 pianos tuned in 6 tones. Basically, all the music that Wyschnegradsky put out from 1936 until his death in 1979 was based around pieces for multiple retuned pianos. He married Lucille Gaydon and moved in together. Her practical and ordered nature flew in opposition to Wyschnegradsky's messiness, but they seemed to work well together. It was the early 1950s that granted him an enviable situation for an artist, living in one of the most influential musical hubs of the world, and one that seemed to be moving more and more in a direction that would be accepting of his incredibly alien music. Sadly, this did not last. Pierre Boulez rose to be the musical leader of sorts in modern France, and declared dodecaphonie, that is, 12-tone music of the likes of Berg and Webern, to be the best music, and was quoted as saying that any musician that has not experienced the necessity of dodecaphonic music is useless. Perhaps for the layperson hearing Wyschnegradsky's music as you have been, this wouldn't have seemed to be that serious of a statement. I mean, his music is outlandish, dense, and dissonant. If you listen to the first movement of Lyric Suite, you might see similarities in the music from that perspective of listenability. The problem is that ultratonality, as Wyschnegradsky championed, was immensely different from serialism. He wrote from expression and emotion, and thought of his music as not a challenge to Romantic era music, but its expansion harmonically. Serialism, on the other hand, was just about making largely mathematic and regimented forms of music that interacted in an artificial way. This change in pace for the Parisians took a disastrous blow on his career, and most of the reputation that he might have acquired in France quickly dissipated as his music became even further from la pensée moderne. His music received little attention all the way until the end of his life. In 1972, the academic journal La Revue Musicale published some of his writings on music, and a couple of concerts were staged of his multi-piano works. His wife passed away. He moved away from the center of the French musical scene as the houses were torn down, and he was chronically ill from tuberculosis and other general health problems. He was invited to be a composer in residence in Berlin, but had to turn it down because of his health. He died sick, poor, and alone, living in the hope that he would be recognized for all of his work before death, but his hopes were not realized. His last flare of minimal success was in his Day of Being, finally being performed, over 6 decades after it was written. Although his biggest wish for the piece was to be performed in Russia, in the original language he had intended, he understood that his wish would probably not be fulfilled for a long time, remarking in a rather jarring way, "That will not be so soon. Many time will pass. I do not mind that. Time does not exist." This was a difficult biography to write for me. Most of the biographical information that I could find on him was only in 2 sources. I used Wikipedia a bit to keep up the track of general timeline, but most personal information about the composer came from Gavin Dixon's website. It seems as though what Dixon said in his article I referenced is true. Single-minded and visionary composers are so often most easily ignored by the changing currents of music taste. I understand that this music probably won't reach all who listen to it, but I hope that I can at least marginally improve the numbers of its fan base, and create more interest in people who seek out and study microtonal music, such as Wyschnegradsky, Eloy Abba, or Julian Carrillo. I also plan on uploading the audio to his complete 24 preludes for quarter-tone piano, as only a few pieces from it are on YouTube. If you have any thoughts about this video, please leave a comment below and tell me. I'm always reading new comments and I love feedback. If you liked the video, please tell me if there are any other composers or musical ideas you would like for me to talk about, and I'll try to make a presentation worthy of all my wonderful viewers. This is Evan Bennet, an American composer, and I thank you for listening.